Can we talk about the name Jesus and his use of the Son of Man?
Yeah, sure.
Because it's a fascinating term, and people struggle with it because is it just Daniel 7? But then why does God call Ezekiel consistently through the book of Ezekiel, Son of Man? Is Jesus drawing on Ezekiel? Is he drawing on Daniel?
So certainly we find in the early church, and in a sense in popular culture, it's very easy to think of an opposition between Son of Man and Son of God.
Right.
That's the simple way it works. But of course, Son of Man was often an expression just for a person. Mm-hmm. So in Aramaic, Son of Man, you might well just call, there's a Son of Man over there. I mean, so it's got that. But then you've got this fact that you've got Daniel 7:13-14, which talks about one like a son of man coming to the Ancient of Days, receiving power and authority, and all nations serving him. And Jesus certainly seems to be using it sometimes in that sort of way. He will pick up the language of authority being given to the Son of Man, that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, for instance. Yeah. So that's where it's interesting. He seems to be referencing back to Daniel, reference to Ezekiel. That's a tougher one, and I'm not sure I can solve that.
That's very disappointing.
On the spot, I'm really sorry to disappoint you there. The other thing is that you actually find some of the features with the way the Son of Man phrase is used, where it actually works not just for Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but also for John, which is a bit different as a gospel,
right?
Where you find talking about the Son of Man being glorified, and again that fits with the Daniel 7 sort of reference. So I think it's a carefully chosen term because Jesus is not proclaiming himself publicly as the Messiah, because that would have been misunderstood.
Right.
And so he's able to point people to Old Testament text and expectation using this and this third person locution, which clearly, when you look at the end of things, is referring to himself.
Yeah, right. And nobody seems to question it in the Gospels. When he talks about himself as the Son of Man, I can't think of any instant where people question that use of the term.
Son of Man, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
But,
whereas when he's identifying himself more obviously with God or as God, forgiving sins, for example, in the healing of the paralytic, that's not so much in what he says, but what he does.
Yes.
But nevertheless, the Pharisees are up in arms about that, and yet, so the Son of Man seems to be able to work as a title that can go under the radar and be accepted by people.
And I think some of what Jesus says actually works at two levels.
Right.
So you'll see this in say John chapter 6, where a modern translation might be inclined to think, shall we talk about Father with a capital F or Father with a small f? And of course that distinction didn't exist at the time of Jesus, and so you have possibility to misunderstand what Jesus is saying when he's talking about my Father. I mean, it even happens, didn't you know it had to be about my Father's business? In Luke chapter 2, he says this to Mary and Joseph, and they're a bit puzzled. What? What's that? So that's where I think there are, there's possibility to read Jesus' words at more than one level.